August 12th, 2026 Finance Committee meeting. With me tonight is Madeline Minot. Why don't I know your name? Because I should. Jack Dunn, Ellen Desmond, and the wonderful Pam. I'm going to kick this off and hand it over to Jack. We've got two agenda items, the fiscal year 2026 audit and legislation with potential financial impacts.
Yep, well, thank you. So for the FY26, it's just an update that we have started that process. We will close the FY26 books next week, and then the auditors will get they'll come out and do their field work. We expect everything for the fiscal audit to be wrapped up by January. It seems to be getting later and later because of the resources that they have, but we'll have everything to them and be ready to go. We did file for the extension on the DOE 25, which will do October 1st. So once they come in and bless the initial trial balance and show, yep, we agree with your numbers to start, then we'll start on that and be done with it. What was it, last month or 2 months ago, I did have Scott McIntyre here from CBiz. The reason I had him come was, one, it's been like 2 years. The second is he's retiring August 31st. So I knew that night, but he had not called all his clients. So we did meet the new person who is well-versed and has a long history of doing audits throughout the state. So we look forward to working with him, but I did send him a follow-up just to see. He said I would let them know January to be conservative. So hopefully we do it earlier, but if not. And then following that, we'll have the single audits that happen for the federal grants. It'll be either one or two, but we don't anticipate any issues. So just a lot of paperwork and a lot of numbers. So that's just an update on the audit.
Are we gonna get a final FY26 financial report when you close the books next week? Because I don't think I've seen it, unless I missed it.
Yeah, no, you didn't, because we don't have the final. As a matter of fact, we just ran 26 invoices still. Stuff that's coming in. And then, we'll do that at the September Finance Committee meeting, because obviously where that ends up is going to affect FY27.
Yes.
Just so you know. And then we'll have our October meeting. This year will probably be a little different with the city's deputy city manager retiring at the end of August. So it'll be interesting. To see where things come out, especially with the reevaluation or reassessment, right? I'll move on to number 2, some legislation. So this is stuff we just got last night from Attorney Eggert's office at Wadley Star, and we just pulled out a couple to highlight. I will say this, that when we met with him, and they're starting to construct their opinions on each of it, so we only pulled out the couple that they've sent, but we've counted parent, guardian, student. There's been 12 bills. Business operation finance, 12 bills. These are all bills that have passed. Personnel, 9, and other miscellaneous, 12. So once we have our hands around all of it, I'm sure Tim will be sharing it with you. I'm just highlighting ones that are going to be probably important. All these were not in their first pass that they just sent out. These are just ones he has kept an internal track that he had attorney discussions with us. But the first one is the education freedom and access to courses and programming. In case you hadn't heard, the EFAs now have the same access for residents that if they were homeschooled or wanted to take a course where, however we treat them, even if they receive an EFA, they get treated the same. They don't get billed anything differently.
When it says including the statewide assessment and preliminary scholastic aptitude test,
Yep.
do we pay individually for PSAT and SAT?
We pay for the whole lump sum of licenses, so it's about 10 or 11 grand.
But do we have to pay per student, or is it like for?
Yes, it's the number of tests.
So this is an increase.
Yep.
I just think it would be good for us to count the increased cost, since the state is not paying its share
Sure.
for these students, that we should be following it.
Yep.
And this is probably for another meeting, but several years ago we had a discussion about homeschool students and co-curricular activities, and how we were determining whether they meet the academic qualifications that students have to meet. And the answer was sort of like, we're not doing anything. And I think we had a discussion then, but I think
That needs to be revisited.
it needs to be revisited. If students in our classrooms have to meet standards, then students coming in also should have to.
Yep. Okay, I will note that and probably have a discussion with Tim and Chris Gallo on that.
Can I, for state aid, how, like if a homeschool student takes one class, I'm guessing they don't count. If like, what's the threshold for a student to start to count as one of our students for state funding? Like, where's the tipping point, I guess is what I'm wondering.
Yep,
Is it established or?
I don't know what that is. I
And
don't even
like,
know.
and how do we, and I know there's issues of how we track them, because there's one student ID number, and if they're using that for an EFA, how are we using it?
Right.
And now, in my understanding on the ordinance, they don't have to even notify you, I'm leaving and I'm coming back. They're just gone. So
Right.
that, trying to figure out what that should be.
And when it says any child with a disability, does that now make us responsible for special education costs for students
We're waiting for Dean to get back to us on
with
that.
EFAs? Because we haven't been.
Correct, right, that was exempt, but we're not sure what that means now.
Well, I'm
Yep.
glad the legislature thought this through
Oh, there's a lot of
so much
clear-
and answered these key questions.
It sure seems like double dipping.
It is totally double dipping, which,
So we just wanted to highlight that to you. It's not it could potentially have impacts, as you said, with the children with disabilities and some of the homeschool and the PSAT and SATs. So we'll get all that data together.
and the fact that we're seeing an increase in enrollment likely next year, it seems, looking at some of the preliminary numbers, we don't get reimbursed, unlike the EFAs, there's a lag for when we see that money in student counts, right?
Yeah, it's on the year before.
Following.
Yeah, it's in arrears, yes, correct. Versus, I think the EFAs are paid out in 4 payments.
Yeah.
And then they hit in the current year and paid to the tuition bill for the current year, yes. The next bill is HB 1300, which is the local tax cap ballot requirement. Notice that says effective September 1. The one that I just shared with you, no, forget that one. So the ballots, from what I've read, have been mailed to the clerk. We have raised to the Secretary of State's office about having 2 different districts. And I think there is another city or town that does have 2 different districts in it. So we wanted to be clear that they know that they have to give out separate ballots, because you don't want Concord voting on
MV.
MV and MV voting on us. So that's to be aware. But basically, they have to, if it passes by a 3/5 majority, and it'll be on twice, in the November of 26 and November of 28, then the local property tax may not grow beyond the prior year's amount. And it also talks about the SAU central office spending may not exceed 6%.
What does it mean by the prior year's amount? The tax rate increased the prior year, or because I thought like the other local tax caps have like, you have
Specific amounts.
growth. Like, what does that mean? Does it mean that 12% were projected for this year is our cap,
So
or
in our conversation with our
or
attorney,
that we
Dean,
can't spend more
We're-
this year than next year than this year?
we're waiting for technical assistance, because you could really have a big year this year, and if it was say 4%, okay, I can't go more than 4% in the prior year. What is going to continue to set what that threshold is?
But and we're not even sure they're talking about percentage.
Correct.
increase.
Right, is it
That's
percentage or
correct.
amount?
Or is it
Because-
amounts?
Because if it's amounts, then we're just then
A smaller and smaller percentage each year.
So more to come with this, but yeah, it's not very clear.
okay.
And we don't, my understanding is we don't have to have a hearing or anything like other ballot questions,
Our-
but we could have a hearing?
Our attorney, Dean, did recommend that you do have a hearing to make
Okay.
people aware that it'll be out there. And
Right.
one of the things we thought about having that right before your monthly meeting in September,
Okay,
I
if that
think we
would make
might.
sense.
that's pretty soon.
Yeah, I think
I mean,
we
it's going to
might
be
want-
on there anyway.
Yeah.
but-
Yeah, I do think we should do a hearing. I think maybe more
towards closer to the election.
Yeah,
Our
Okay.
October meeting,
September,
maybe?
October, and maybe it's
Yep.
separate. I don't.
Okay. We'll come up with some dates for that.
But
and get
it would
back
be
to you.
nice to know what it means.
Yeah.
Before
Yeah.
that, if we could.
Get some guidance for sure.
Yeah, and I bet once we get that, there'll probably be a lot of different interpretations of how that would feel. So, all right, next one is HB 656, which went into effect yesterday. And I have Ellen here to talk about the acceptance of federal grants by school districts, these adjustments, and kind of how we do it now, and what we're interpreting it may mean. But again, this is one we'll need more guidance on, but we wanted you to be aware.
Yeah.
I'll let you take it away off our discussions.
Sure.
about
So
this.
we've again just done a preliminary pass at this today, but our understanding is that the term annual reports, beginning with the annual reports prepared for FY28, our understanding of that is that's our DOE 25. It's the only reference made in this RSA that is noted by the New Hampshire Department of Education as an annual fiscal report. So we believe that that's what is being referenced here in the legislation. The big question we have about that is that the DOE 25 is in arrears, and it does not call for estimated costs.
I wonder if
For the
it's,
upcoming
they're
year?
thinking of the annual report people do at town meetings.
We were wondering about that too. That's possible.
Yeah.
So that is another potential ahead of the warrant, and then if that's the case, it could potentially be a moot point, since that does not impact us. So more information to come on that. I think ultimately what the RSA is trying to get at is transparency with if we receive funds in the middle of the year, making it accessible. It doesn't really change a whole lot to the verbiage around defining what unanticipated funds are. If it's above or below the 20,000, we already do that. We come to you to explain
So we
what
might
the
have
funds are
to
for and all that.
go under 20,000 for grants, it sounds like.
Yeah, and one of our other questions too is, when we get carryover funding midway through the year, is that considered unanticipated funds, even though it's the same funding stream? It's just sometimes the state has more money in its coffers when it closes the books on September 30th. So when we get that carryover funding, or what does that mean for us? More on that. We're not quite sure what annual report they're talking about, and
Well, we did start doing an annual report as a district, so I assume we can put it in our annual report.
we certainly can. Yep. And honestly, it would be the same as what I provide you for budget season anyway. That is what we're anticipating in allocations. We got pretty close this year, but in February and March, it's all a total guess based on really arbitrary. The DOE doesn't provide the formula, so I can't figure it out. But I've gotten pretty close. But I guess until we formally adopt we accept the funds of the allocations that we've received in a given year, then we're not technically tied to them. But I don't think it will substantially change how we do business. We obviously want taxpayers to know what funds we're receiving and how we're spending them. So. More to come on officially what we have to file, or if new tabs will pop up on a new form or something like that. But the sentiment of the law is kind of business as usual, I would say, for the most part.
So yeah, we're like we do every year when we do the budget. We just list out what we estimate because we don't know our allocations until April, May, sometimes later
earliest,
than that.
yeah.
Yeah. So if we produce that and then it's 20,000 or more different, do we have to come back? Although it says that we doesn't preclude us from, what did it say? Accepting and
Yeah, so
dispersing
we can
funds, so-
accept you all can, as the legislative body, you can accept and expend. I think it's really the notification to the public as to what obligations have we made under that application for award. Making sure that is either in a public hearing or it's included in the meeting minutes of a regular school board meeting, which we already do. So that's that.
Okay. And I think that was the ones that we thought were probably the most impactful at the moment. And what he included so far, it was only, like I said, all these different bills, 12, 12, 9, and 12. The thing they just sent out was 15 pages. And some of it had to do with things that were not financial, so we didn't include those. But it's gonna be definitely interesting as we prepare. We'll still produce our 18 by 24 poster paper that goes on there. That is still in the law. I did ask if the font changed. It hadn't, but just, important stuff. So, is there anything else?
If Mr. Dunn is, I had two things that I wanted
Yeah.
to
I
bring
have
to
one more
this
question about the
committee.
ballot
Yep.
question and the 6 or 7% SAU funding. 6%. Have we estimated, I think last time we discussed this, there was some lack of clarity of what counts as SAU
Still lack of clarity.
expenses? Okay.
Yep. We're waiting for that from, I don't know if it's going to be DOA, DRA, or a combination of both.
Okay.
At least that's what we were told. But and then when it says of the budget, is it the total budget? Is it general fund or is it everything? Because you're at
Right.
115 now.
Yeah.
So on 115, I calculated this earlier, I don't know why I forgot. If I did 6%, that's 6.9 million is your cap.
Right.
But if it's 123 million, because that's your grants and
Yeah.
your food service, then it's
Or
higher.
is it just what's raised from local taxes?
Right.
Is it, yeah.
I'm thinking that's the intent, but
But if
it's
they
not
didn't,
clear.
if they said the budget, then I would include our entire budget.
The entire budget.
I would also like to point out that SAUs, we're one district, so we have, but a lot of SAUs centralize services to help save their various communities money. But the people who work in SAU's offices have life and death responsibilities for children, and they're capping that at 6%, where the Education Scholarship Organization gets 10% for sending out checks. And apparently not even validating that the money is being spent correctly, so.
It's also worth noting too that our indirect rate, which is meant to be for administrative costs, is capped every year around 2%. So that means that our actual indirect administrative costs are only, we're only charging our grants up to maybe 2%. So our costs are pretty low comparatively.
The two things I wanted to bring up, we discussed one of them at our sort of mid-year check-in, which is making a recommendation to the board that we set up a revenue committee, specifically to look at opportunities, I think, about expanding the hours and offerings of the CRTC to other programs. So I would like to move that we make that recommendation to the board.
Yeah.
I will second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstain? Stupid. Okay, it passes.
The second thing is I would like to recommend to the board that we send a letter to the city council and the conservation committee asking if they want to exercise their right of first refusal around broken ground.
I'm just wondering if that's the right time to do that since we don't have the authority to sell it. Just saying, if we get the authority to sell it, would you be interested in
I
exercising
think
your right of first
that's
refusal?
what, I mean, if
Yeah.
there is going to be a conservation effort,
Right.
then I think we need to find out from them early, are they involved in this?
Right.
Or not?
Right. Do you have any interest in? Yeah.
I did have a conversation with the Society for Protection in New Hampshire Forests. There had been some indirect outreach, and they expressed some interest. If we were interested, but we have to go to the city first. So I think that would be step one. If the Conservation Commission wants to do that, then that thing, and then I think the second step would be deciding how much we want to keep and getting a valuation, because I did talk to the society, the person I talked to from the society, they were very clear that they understand that it would be market value,
And that it would have to pass the ballot question.
yes, yeah. So, but I think the first step would be seeing, is this, because I have heard mixed things from folks in the city about their interest
Yeah.
in additional conservation land. So if the city council is not interested, I think that's something
Well,
important to know.
The abutting property to this is 70 acres
Yeah.
that they own that's
Yeah.
conservation, which is where the property we have came from, because we used to own that side of it.
Right.
So there's 50 years of history on this that we'll bring to you.
So, but,
So,
so that I'm moving that we just recommend to the board that we formally ask the city council if they have interest in this property.
Sure. I will second that.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
and I think it's not something that you're just bringing out of thin air. There is a facility use agreement that's between the city, and that's what you're probably
Yeah,
referring
yeah.
to, because they do have a right of first refusal, but this new vote trumps that.
Right.
So it doesn't mean it can still bypass the vote. We can't no longer
It still
go right
has
to the city.
to be approved
Not
on a
anymore.
ballot question.
Yeah.
And then the city has a right of first refusal.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I do think like I think there are a number of sort of disjointed efforts going on at the moment around conservation and raising money, and I think the first step is if the city is not going to support this being conservation land,
Right.
then I think people should know that, and if they are, then they have a conservation commission that can lead that effort.
Or the city could want it for any reason.
Yeah, they could want it for other reasons too. Yeah.
Right.
So.
While we're making motions about recommendations to ask the city things, at our mid-year check-in, we also brought up the issue of a potential TIF district with the mall redevelopment. I would like us to engage in discussions with the city to request that they include us on any, I mean, that would be my ideal, that we be included in those discussions. I don't know if that's possible.
I think that's appropriate. I think it's, given that the property hadn't been used for housing before, now they're talking about a significant amount of housing, which could mean significant increase in costs for us,
Yeah.
like to take off.
Lock that up.
Lock that off
is
would
my
be,
concern.
yeah, so I think I would second that motion.
Okay.
I need help. Say their motion one more time.
That the school board request that the city include, I don't know if it's the school board or the school board president.
The school
The school
district.
district in any discussions and negotiations of the potential creation of a TIF district
Around the redevelopment
of the Steeplegate
mall
Mall.
property. Steeplegate and adjoining
And
properties.
yes, right, the movie theater,
Yeah.
yes, that entire complex.
Okay. You brought the motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Discussion? Motion passes.
Okay.
So you'll have 3 action items at your September 1 meeting.
Yep.
Okay.
What a busy
Half hour, 23
23
minutes.
minutes.
Listen, you guys are.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I have nothing else.
All right. Would everyone like to make a motion to adjourn?
I will move that we adjourn.
All right. We'll keep
Second.
it going. Go.
Yeah, I'll
All
just
in
keep-
favor?
Aye.
Aye. It is 5:24. This meeting is now closed.
Is he good? Welcome, everybody, to the August 12th Instructional Committee meeting of the Concord School Board. Chair Brenda Hastings is not with us tonight. She's not feeling well. Nothing worse than feeling crappy in the summer. Sarah Sadowski will be joining us late. In attendance are Madeline Minot, Alex Dubois, and myself, Barbara Higgins, and also hanging out with us, Jess Campbell and Pamela Walsh.
I'm not on instructional. I'm also just hanging
Oh,
out.
you're just, that's right. You're on all my other committees.
I was on finance, and so I'm like, I'm here. I'll stick around for a little bit.
That's right. Well, that's good, because now we have enough people here to actually have a meeting. So for now, you're on instructional committee meeting. And doing most of the talking tonight will be Chris Gallo. I love saying that. This is really fun, having our first instructional committee meeting together. Yay!
It is.
In your new role. So initially, we were going to talk about the 306s and the counseling piece, but that's all set.
Yep.
We've taken care of all that. So now on deck is You Tell Me,
Okay,
and then
we
we
have
can
two
begin.
agenda items. You can decide which ones you want to do first.
Yeah.
Which one you want to do first. There's the Carnegie Math Professional Development Plan for
Yep.
the school year,
Right.
and the Savis ELA Literacy Curriculum Professional Development for the school year. That's one agenda item.
Yep.
And the other, which my friends are in the audience, Krista Mers will be joining us too, is to talk about math. What initiated the conversation was the math SAT at the high school,
Yes.
looking at that data. And so I invited some fellow math friends to come and talk about the math plans, what was happening last year and what's happening this year,
Right.
to look at curriculum and student achievement.
Nice. Yeah, we're making good changes. Why don't we start with the first agenda item you mentioned, since Chris isn't here yet, and then that would make good sense. Thank you.
So keep these together. It's one little packet.
And if it's, I don't need a copy, if it's in the folder.
I think I have enough.
I have.
Take both. Take the whole packet. It's
Oh,
two
it's the
sheets.
whole packet.
Yeah, take two sheets. It's the top two when you get it.
Colorful.
So the top one is Savis, which is our K-6 ELA program that you helped us adopt last school year. And so it's been wonderful. I have to say it's been wonderful to work with both the ELA and the math folks. They talked with us at length, talked with our teachers who came in June to start learning about materials, third week of June, right after we got out of school, and then developed a professional development plan for our school year PD days and beyond. So not to just read the whole thing to you, but the top row is the 2 June days we did. The 22nd was with staff, and then the 23rd was just with administrators, and that was very helpful to us to talk about, what to expect in terms of walking into a classroom and what it should look like. And then you'll see that we have plans for the first professional development day, August 27th, which is the day before the district day. And then the second day is September 8th, and then it goes on to October 9th. And then we have some optional PD days in December. You can see how many consultants are coming for each of those days. It's really nice that they're breaking us out into kindergarten, grades 1 and 2, grades 3 to 5, grade 6. We have special ed and ML teachers, our literacy coaches, and our administrators all joining different cohorts to learn different parts in different grade levels of the program. And to get more of a sense of what their terminology means, where it says ready, set, teach, you can go to the back side, and there's an explanation, a general explanation of what those things will look like. So I'm just going to give you some time to look at it first.
Is the general sense from the staff like enthusiasm and excitement? I mean, the presentations were so wonderful.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, the staff who came on June 22nd were very excited. Now, tends to be the, the early adopters that come early.
Yeah, because they're all in.
Yes,
Right,
and
yeah.
they want to do their planning over the summer, but they ask great questions about things they may not have understood right away. They asked about, what are the goals for the professional development? How do you unpack these lessons? And so the trainers did a really nice job talking about that and talking about the plans for the school year.
Nice.
We also just added, if you'll see where I just wrote in September 8th, I added in a piece for learning about the literacy interventions that the program offers. And so we'll be inviting teachers and interventionists to attend those. Hi, Sarah. No problem. We're also going to extend an invitation beyond just classroom teachers and other CEA staff to EAs, educational assistants, and tutors, because these are staff that are supporting kids in the classroom, and especially the EAs. And tutors are supporting kids sometimes in the classroom and lots of times outside of the classroom. And it's really important to us to ensure that all the staff working with kids understand common language, the goals of the program and the lessons, and the instructional approaches, because they're not necessarily all going to be the same that they've been in the past. So Ellen Desmond and I have been working on activity write-ups to support paying our support staff personnel to come to these PD days that aren't
That's the hardest piece.
typical.
They're sometimes a key part of what makes the whole thing work, and they're hourly workers, so they need to be paid for those times, and
Yep.
that can be tricky sometimes, which
Yeah.
is sad. But no, that's fantastic, because that will definitely make it flow better. Does anyone here have any questions about this layout so far?
Where are you looking at the money for coming from some of our title?
Title II,
Title
Title IIA, yep, the professional development grants.
Nice.
And that's to pay for the consultants and also to pay staff to attend, like our support staff. And if staff come to these December after school dates, we'll be able to pay for that as well.
Right. Fabulous. Yeah, we have a very front-loaded professional development year.
Yeah.
Kind of like all these voting days, right?
Yes.
Awesome, awesome. So this is every classroom district-wide now?
It's K to 6
yeah,
for
right,
the
right,
ELA.
right, right.
Yeah, district-wide.
That's wonderful. All right.
Good for ELA?
Yeah,
All right,
excellent.
come back to it if
Thank
you
you.
think of questions.
Yep.
The next one is math, grades 8 through 11, 12. It's Algebra 1, Algebra 2, Geometry. And what I loved about my session with Carnegie Learning, you can see leadership team on June 23rd, is we never even talked about math in that leadership session. We talked about good instruction. And they really impressed me with everything they knew, the activities they asked us to do. They kind of modeled what you could do with kids in the classroom. And I just was very excited about working with these consultants. And they also happen to know a lot of math.
That's helpful.
So I'll give you some time just to look through that plan, and then I'll speak to it.
I have a question. My understanding is in grade 7, we have 2 different tracks for math. There's like an advanced math track and a regular math track. Does this curriculum apply to the grade 7 advanced math at all? Or you
It
said, like,
just starts in
at 8?
Algebra 1, yeah, which is in grade 8,
Okay.
yeah. But it doesn't mean that we can't get creative.
But
And
at grade 8, I mean, several years ago, we had a discussion that we were moving to including more
Students
8th graders in Algebra 1, but it doesn't sound like we're there yet.
I think it's a 50-50 right now, from what Mr. Richard had said. About half the class, the grade level, is in Algebra 1.
Which is
They
way
use
higher than it was.
they
Well, that was
use
like 30 kids last year.
well, they use data to make those decisions, and then Mr. Richard said, but I do have several families or students reach out and say, I really want to try this, and he says, yes, if you really want to, I believe that you're going to work hard, and let's try it. And anyone in Algebra 1 in 8th grade can move out of Algebra 1 if it's just too much. They want to keep it flexible because they do not want to track.
Right. So this, but Carnegie starts in grade 7?
Grade 8.
Oh, okay, great, all right.
So in general, the plan, again, starting on August 27th, is going to include the 4 hours, just like for the ELA teachers on August 27th, and continue to September 8th. But it doesn't continue past September 8th because at that point, they really move into their learning lab model, where they're working with individual teachers. They're co-planning with them, they're co-teaching with them, they're modeling lessons, or they're watching the teacher teach, and then they're debriefing, reflecting about next steps for instruction. And that actually, I forgot to tell you, was happening with Savis as well. We asked them about that, and they said, we love that idea, we're going to do the same thing.
So when it says 10 full days, it's over the course of the year?
Yeah.
It's that kind of coming in and
In the
working,
classroom.
spending it.
Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah, that's fantastic.
And I mean, research tells us that's the most effective professional development you can give someone. Be in the room with them.
Right.
Don't just sit there and observe and tell them everything they did right or wrong, but actually do it with them and give each other feedback and play off each other. And so that's going to be very exciting. That's
Well,
a fun model.
I know as a teacher, implementing new curriculum, we'd have all this upfront training, but you don't know what to ask. You
Right.
don't know how it's going to go. And then all the questions you really want to ask are 2 or 3 weeks or months later, and there's
Yeah.
no one to ask. So, yeah.
And what's wonderful about both programs, the consultants say, even if I'm not there one day and you have questions, please just reach out, email me, or we can set up a Zoom call. I just love how available
They
our consultants are to us.
Nice.
They're not, for people listening, they're not consultants and like the sort of like we're hiring somebody just to, like, they are people who work for the company where you're buying this curriculum from
Right.
and are available to
Yeah.
come and coach and consult.
Yes.
They're not a separate
True, yes. Thank
Part
you
of
for
it.
clarifying that.
The word consultant sometimes has a bad.
It's already
Yeah.
included in the cost.
Yes,
of-
that's just,
Yep.
I just want to make sure people, yeah.
Yes.
Excellent. Awesome. Well, this is exciting. I can't wait.
I know.
As much as I love the reading and writing as an educator, my curiosity is around the math because we've had such huge changes at the high school level and middle school mindset around math in the past, like, 12 years or so. So I'm excited to see
Yeah.
how this helps.
And Chantel and I have talked a lot about doing walkthroughs in the classrooms just to get our eyes on what strong instructional strategies teachers are taking away. Because it takes a while to change your practice. You might try something and be like, I'm not that comfortable doing it yet. But if we just continue to really focus on it throughout the year and reflect back to educators, like, I saw you do this one thing, and it was pretty impactful. We're just really hoping to help people feel good about changes.
Awesome. Do you have a question?
Oh, I just wanted to say, and what I really appreciate about the changes that we're making is that they're underpinned with a pedagogy that you've shared with us. I mean, that John Hattie article was fantastic.
Oh,
so thank
good.
you so
I'm
much.
glad you
It's
liked
really
that.
helpful to see kind of what's
I
behind
nerded out, yeah.
some of the choices that are being made. So thank you.
Good.
Are there different levels that it can be implemented at, or is it one curriculum that's to all the math classes?
So are you talking about the professional development piece? So the professional development itself isn't going to just be focused on math. It'll be around instructional strategies. And if I could predict, I'm thinking that Carnegie could become a really strong partner with us in the future, not just for math, but beyond.
Or methodology.
Yeah. I'm really excited to learn from them and what they're bringing to the table because they're all about a strong tier one, regardless of what the domain is.
It's fantastic. Awesome. You guys are good. All right.
Okay, that's math and ELA PD so far for the year. That's agenda item 1.
Yay.
And agenda item 2, my friends are coming up, and then I'm handing it over to them. Come on up. So we have Chris Demers,
Krista Mers.
our assessment coordinator, and we have Jen Charleston, who is our current upcoming curriculum facilitator for math, and then Nicole Barnett, who is our former curriculum facilitator for math, who is going to be one of our teachers in the Crimson Point program this year that we're just starting at the high
Is that
school.
the one Commons B?
Yeah. So
Welcome, beautiful people.
here you go, beautiful
Beautiful.
people.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
I agree.
I appreciate that. Oh, good, that worked right away. Thanks for having us. All right, so you get to listen to me ramble on for just a little bit, and then the stars of the show. I'm like the opening act.
Can I interrupt real quick? Do you want me to pass these out yet? Or wait?
No,
Okay.
no, that'll distract people,
Yes.
and we don't want that yet. All right, let me just make sure this is working. So, my job is to sort of set the stage with, you would ask for a little bit of data, and then to give you a little bit of a heads up of what the math department at the high school did with some of that that we get back from the College Board. And then after I bore you with a little bit of nerdy stuff, then the ladies can sort of fill in like the rest of the story. So I'll start, and then you'll get something far more from the person to my right and my left. All right, so I think you know the story already, but just for the sake of catching everybody up onto the same page. In red, we see the percentage of students who take the SAT. It's part of the state accountability system, and then obviously many students take it for other reasons. For the last 3 years, the percentage of students who are meeting the benchmark in math, which these are not impressive percentages, and that's partly what we're going to talk about. And then you can see below that what the percentage was statewide. And you can see that they're not particularly great either. Just for context's sake, because this came up the other day when we were talking, and Nicole had asked the question, well, what were the pre-pandemic numbers? And so I looked that up for 2019, and for Concord that particular year, I think we had 41% of the students who are meeting the math benchmark at that point. So again, not particularly fantastic. There is something about the nature of math, whether we're talking SAT, SAS, iReady, they continue to lag behind ELA results. I wish I can explain why. I think it is something to do with the nature of math. This is not unique to Concord. This is just life in the assessment world. I added New Hampshire here just to give some context and just to get a little more nerdy about this. You can see numbers-wise how many students are taking the SAT in Concord. So it's on either side of 300 for these 3 years. Versus what you see for the state, it's just over 10,000 for those 3 years. And I added in a confidence interval range, and this is, I have no right saying this when I'm flanked by 2 high school math teachers, but I'll do my best to explain this. When you're comparing a very large group to a very small group, it's not a fair comparison. And so if we were to say a third of that end of the table where Barb is sitting, if a third of those people were to stand up right now, it's only one person. If we were to say a third of the people in this room, it's obviously going to be more people than that. And if we scale this up even further, the larger the group, the more people you have in a percentage of that group. So when we're comparing a small group like Concord to the entire state, we have to apply what's called the confidence interval to sort of get a sense of just how far off or on are these percentages. And so if you look at those 3 little number lines underneath, and we sort of focus in on that middle one, for example, you can see that there's overlap. Overlap meaning that 28% for Concord was within range of what we could expect when the state was at 30%. It's not to say that we're pleased by this, but it's not dramatically different from how everybody else in the state performed. We don't see that same overlap with the other 2 years. That 20% offers up a range of, well, what could be as low as 16 and as high as 24%. But when you look at the range of 30% for a much larger sample, that range is only 29 to 31. It's a very small, it's a tighter range simply because you have way more kids in that. And if you look at the little cheat sheet here at the bottom, the number line doesn't show an overlap. So in other words, that range for Concord in pink is offset from the state. That's remarkably lower, or we would say statistically significantly lower than the state. And the same is true for the 26 years. So while we're not pleased with any of these percentages for either the state or for the district, we were at least in 25 within range of what we could expect. Not so for these other 2. So that's That's what we're dealing with, and that's what we're wrestling with. So, moving ahead, what the math department has done with this information is try to sort of make sense of this by going under the hood a bit. The SAT math offers up the results, not just an overall score or a percentage of students that hit a benchmark, but they give us some sort of domain information. And there are basically 4 domains that are reported on the SAT. And what we've consistently seen as we've looked at SAT for those 3 years, as well as PSAT for those at least 2 years, so a lot of data for 9th, 10th, and 11th graders over multiple years, we consistently see that advanced math is the one domain that is most difficult for our kids. And conversely, problem solving and data analysis is our relative strength. And I'll show you where that comes from, and we'll use the 2026 results to sort of unpack that. So you may remember from your own time taking the SAT, you get a scale score. The benchmark of 530 for math is considered sort of the threshold for meeting benchmark. So if you look over here on the far left side, you have all these performance bands. So the lowest score you can get on the SAT in the math section is a 200, and the highest score you can get is an 800. All the ones where you see the green boxes, those are the ranges that are considered meeting benchmark. So if I get anything above a 550, I've sort of hit the threshold. I've shown that I'm proficient enough in math. And then, so if you look at where this red line is, that means that everybody that fell above this red line in these performance bands are below benchmark. And so these percentages that you see at the top are what percentage of our students for this last round of SATs fell below that benchmark. And again, like it's been for years, our highest percentage of kids falling below is in advanced math. It is just harder math. And then, consistent with how we've done everywhere else and every other year, our relative strength, the fewest number of kids and lowest percentage of kids scoring below that red line. I know it's above in the case of this table, but these are all the kids here who have fallen below that in problem solving. That's our lowest percentage, so we would call that our relative strength. And that's been consistent for years. And if we bring in the state numbers, the same is true for the state. These boxes in green are basically telling you what percentage of the students in New Hampshire are falling below that expected threshold. And while their percentages are lower, which would mean better, they are still 75% of the students in the state are below expected in advanced math.
Yeah, the pattern is similar.
It is very similar. And 70%, I guess for the state too, is their relative strength, and I use that with air quotes. These percentages are way too high, and we acknowledge that. Students are really struggling on this assessment. But we're at least trying to sort of get under the hood and get a sense of, all right, well, where do we put our efforts? Not that we're going to celebrate and stop teaching problem solving and analysis and data analysis and teach exclusively advanced math, but where would we put extra emphasis to sort of help more kids in that area?
I'm sorry, I missed. Who sets the benchmark? How is 530 determined to be the benchmark?
College Board.
It's the
And it's
College
likely
Board
based on
benchmark.
national norms. Yeah, and that may shift over time. I think for the 3 years that we're talking, it hasn't moved. But it's likely that comes from years and years of national norms.
Right, it makes me wonder what the national results would be, right? And
Right.
so
I
then
suspect-
presumably at the national level.
Or I suspect the pattern would be similar. The percentages may not be the same per se. Yeah, I mean, I actually can unpack that now, but it would probably take more time than we
No,
have.
not
SAT
not
used
necessarily,
in
I'm
all
just curious.
States as in New Hampshire?
Say again.
Is the SAT used
It is.
in high schools across the country as it is in?
And across the world. I mean, for us, it's part of our accountability system.
But that's what I'm wondering, are all high school students, nationally taking the SAT? Because their results could just be the people who
Yeah.
who opted to take it, which is going to be a very different outcome
Right.
than every student in
Not
the high
everyone,
school has to
right,
take
as
it,
we
yes.
know, not everyone's required to and nor does take it
But
in
we
this.
really, really encourage
In
all
a-
students.
Well, in our state, it is required.
Right.
So because it's
Yeah,
part of our
no.
accountability system, but you're right.
Exactly.
Nationally,
Yeah.
other states, internationally, you're maybe unfair to say you're getting cream of the crop, but not everybody who perhaps is not either college bound or opts to not take it because they don't have to, then you're
But
not
if
going to
students are
include those.
paying, well, if they're just, there could be more, they could be more vested, and it would be hard to compare the results, I think, with you, if you have a state where all students are expected to take it for state requirements and benchmarks versus only students who are interested in taking it or need to take it for college, I think the
About
results would just-
47% take the SAT nationally.
Say again?
47%.
47%.
Yeah.
It's lower than I thought it would be.
I think it's
Yeah.
a really valid point
Right.
that it is the norm of the standard, the benchmark for kids who are planning to go to college.
Which is
Who-
why I think
And
it's.
on a
And who are motivated to do well.
Right.
Right.
And which is why for us, to give context, we stick with just the state.
Yeah.
And in this case, we stick with public schools only because the state gives us a breakdown of all students in New Hampshire. I decided to just choose public schools for the fairest of comparisons that we can.
I know this will come up in further discussion, but the problem I always have, and this comes from 20 years as a special educator, is you take a test on Tuesday, and that score defines you for, and maybe if you had taken that same test on Friday, when details in your life were different, the results would be different. That's one piece of it. And the other piece is the manner in which the information is pulled from you to put your answer on the sheet isn't the strength for everyone taking the test. So we have so many things that can weigh into these scores. I'm just adding that in there.
Sure.
I have a hard time when people look at this as this is how successful we are. Well, no. On that kind of test, on that given day, with this group of students, many of whom maybe didn't want to take the test, many of whom, did, whatever, this is how we are.
We could spend far longer
I know.
tonight to
No.
talk about this. You're
Sorry.
absolutely right about
I
that.
know.
And Barb, you're showing your age too. They're not putting anything on a sheet anymore, by the way. Gone are the number 2 pencils.
No,
Gone are
it's
the bubble
a good
sheets.
point, because
Yeah.
it's, who does math on a computer? You need to write it out.
Yeah.
Well,
And
and
that's available to students when they're taking the test, but
so a little bit of a side note there for our youngest students who are doing a lot of work on computers, taking the iReady, soon to be renamed diagnostic, now called iReady Inform, 3 times a year. The expectation for our 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders doing that is to do all of their work on paper. They have math journals that are issued to them. Teachers expect them to do everything here before they enter an answer there, which we have seen a huge increase in terms of engagement, in terms of performance, because students are taking the time to work it out here as opposed to just selecting the best answer and trying to keep everything in their brain.
Yeah.
Do most of our students only take the SAT once?
I would say yes. As I see reports coming in from other times besides the school day SAT, I'll get 4 here, 7 there, sometimes just 1 or 2.
Because I was going to say, where I went to high school, we were encouraged to take the SAT many, many times.
Right.
And so the first time you're nervous and it's new and you don't do great, and then you do it again, and then you do it again, and then you get better.
Yeah,
at
it was
taking
standard to
the-
take it at least
You
2
get better at
times, yeah.
taking the test, right?
and I believe during COVID, colleges stopped looking really at the SAT scores, but they're starting to look at them again and use that. I think that message needs to be shared with families as well.
A very small percentage of students take it multiple times. Yeah. And certainly
And we also
3 or 4 times is
And you
rare.
get to see, so if students from our school take it somewhere else on their own time and pay, you get the results from that?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's good.
And because we know practice is important, we tried to run the SAT prep class this year, but we didn't have enough students.
Right.
10.
Pam, and then I have a question.
Just going back to the paper, I think it's great that we're really going back into the 3rd, 4th, but I think we have a bubble of students, and we can see it on all of our scores, that the COVID bubble, the
Yeah.
kindergarten through 2nd, 3rd grade are behind on everything. And one of the things, because I have one of those kids, is they started on math on computers, and they think they have to do everything in their heads, and they
how do we get them to, how are we going back to train them to use paper
Use scratch paper.
now? Because I don't think they're doing that. I think they're still, like, we've been doing a lot of Khan Academy over the summer, and like, I have to sit there and say, no, take out a piece of paper, don't guess.
Yeah, I think that's the expectation that Chantel's setting in the elementary schools. If we can
But
continue
I'm
that
not
through
talking
middle.
about the elementary. I'm like, what are we
Right,
doing
if
to
we
go
can-
back to these kids who are there
Right, if we can
now?
continue those expectations into the middle school and high school, that would be,
But that's not my question.
No, the current middle
I'm talking
schoolers.
about the current
Yeah.
middle schoolers, the current ninth graders, the kids who.
That
The
COVID
one's
bubble.
going into 7, 8,
It's
9.
great, yeah.
Well, the Carnegie
gonna say
program,
it's
because, and we piloted that, actually for the rest of the year at the high
Yeah.
school, we kept with it. And most of that, they have an online portion that, they have so many resources that we really weren't able to dive into everything, but I mean, 95% of what we did was written work on paper and very, I think every teacher at the high school, and I worked at the middle school for years as well, so I can speak to that as well, is it's an expectation that students are doing their work on paper, and if they come with an answer, not even necessarily showing work, but explaining, can you just write down how you knew that, where that answer came from? I do think that we do a pretty good job with requiring the kids to do that, or hopefully teaching them. We do hit a lot of resistance from kids. I think in the high school they eventually hit a level in math where they have to write some stuff down. Those kids, because then they get really frustrated because they can't keep track of it all in their head. But I think our new program will lend really well to the written work as well.
I think one of the ladies will talk about building thinking classrooms as well in a few minutes, that I think also supports this. And this is something we've tried as young as first grade. I just talked to a first grade teacher today from one of our schools who was beside herself with excitement about doing that again this year. That will make more sense once we explain what that is. But she's geared up. She's already wondering about next week's training about this, and it's gone all the way up through the high school, where students are starting with their teachers in a way that doesn't involve computers. It involves collaborating together and doing some real math thinking. And again, the ladies can explain it far better when the time is right. But I think that also would be a move in that direction. Was there another question before
I have no idea what it was, so. you can-
All right, well, see,
I don't
Barb, we
remember.
waited long enough. All right, so very briefly, and then I'll turn it over to the ladies. So what the math department did back in, I think, November, was take this data, and to the credit of the College Board, they've included what they call this Skill Insights tool that allows us to say, all right, well, if we look at advanced math, as we indicated, that's our weakest area. And for this particular, and this was probably PSAT, I think, we had nearly a third of our kids who were in this range of getting a 370 to a 410. So nearly a third of our kids were scoring there. So we go to this insight tool. This is what the math department did, and they said, all right, well, let's call up advanced math. Let's select that domain range. And what it produces is, here are the math skills that are typical for a student who is operating at that level, at least based on this test. And to Barb's credit, she's right. It can't just be about one event, one test. But if we sort of take this as, all right, well, this is an indicator of where a student is operating. It is not the sole indicator. We have a lot more information than just this test. But if we believe just that piece, this is what students can be expected to be able to do. And then it will provide some example questions, like here's how College Board is asking around these skills, like what would they ask students to do? And then we started to think about, all right, well, where's the next stop? If a third of our kids are here, we've got another almost quarter of the kids that are at this range, and they're just below the line. And if we start to think about, well, what about the kids who are actually operating here, which we've got about 16% of the kids, what kind of questions are they being asked, and what kind of skills are they working on? So this is what the math department played around with, was sort of mapping out what is being asked, what skills are being addressed, and what is that looking like on the test. And so they basically just did a fishing expedition, found the skills, and literally copied and pasted them onto a slideshow. They were doing this together in school and in teams of 2, and the entire department was sort of feeding the same document of skills and example questions. And just to give you a slice of this, so for the PSAT for our 10th graders and 11th graders. In advanced math, these were some of the skills. We had over a third of our kids who were sort of operating at this level, and we're pushing them to this next level in terms of skills. I won't get into the details of it, but just to give you this idea of this progression of skills that our students are expected of, or that are expected of them, and then what kinds of questions might they see at each of these levels. So we would see at the 370 to 410 range, questions that look like this, and then as we progress through, the questions get harder, and they, through this fishing expedition, were sort of pooling together some resources that they could share across the department around advanced math, so that maybe they might start, and Nicole and Jen can speak more to this, may start a class session around one question. Let's collaboratively look at this question. Let's think about ways we could answer this beyond just the choose the best answer, but why is B the right answer? And giving some exposure to these kinds of questions and the thinking behind that. It's not alone going to turn the tide, but it's a move in that right direction.
So when I took the SAT, it was all on paper. So I'm just trying to understand: are they adaptive questions?
Mildly.
Okay, so the kids who are getting the 400 are seeing the questions for the kids, and they're
Right.
just not getting as many right.
Unlike the iReady, which is far more adaptive,
Yeah.
it will keep kids where they operate
Yeah.
because that's its design.
Yeah.
It's meant to do that.
Yeah.
This is not meant to do that.
Okay, that's just what I.
Right.
because
No,
you
they're
said
seeing the full
questions
range.
they will see, so I just want to.
Yeah, it's
understand
mildly
the language.
adaptive, but really not, because
Yeah.
that's not its intent. Its
Yeah.
intent is to sort of figure out where is the student.
Yeah.
As is iReady's intent, but then there's more to it than that. It doesn't want to push kids and purposely give them opportunities to get a lot of things wrong.
Yeah.
It finds where they're starting to get things wrong and says, okay, we found your ceiling, let's now operate below it. SAT's not going to do that. They're going to give you everything. And likely those kids who are operating in a much lower range are going to really struggle with these questions. But we don't want to ignore them and not give them an opportunity to
Yeah.
engage with these, which is why we wanted to sort of conduct that fishing expedition, so that we had a chance to, at least from a point of exposure.
Well, and that's right, because if the kids are exposed, because we also don't want them to shut down when they start seeing things that they have no idea, and then they get very frustrated, and then we have a mindset issue. So
For example,
exposure is important for
Which
that
one?
too.
This one?
Nope, that
That
one. Yeah.
All right.
I mean, just looking at it, you
Right.
don't even have to read it. You look at it, and for a student who struggles, they're next.
Right. Well, it's a lot easier to just pick a letter and move on.
And this isn't even the top of the pile either. We still have two more
Yeah.
domain ranges to go through. So,
Yeah.
so that's what the department
believe
did
I
back
never
in the
did that.
fall, and now you've indulged me.
You
once
you
made
still
sense.
know. Trust me.
It's now about like, what do we do with this?
So here I take
history.
over. So some history for everybody.
Do I go yet?
We're gonna start in here. Yeah, you can hand that.
Oh, okay.
now. Yeah, thank you.
It's time. It's time.
So there's my big bullet points of what we've been working on in the math department for honestly the last maybe 20 years, just to get a little bit of history. Starting off with the standardized assessment versus authentic performance tasks. In 2015, we started, the Concord School District was one of the first districts in the state to work with a PACE program, Performance Assessment and Competency Education, which was 100% authentic performance assessment that we were able to embed into our classroom practice during the units from which they go, for where they go. So if you're in a geometry class and your performance assessment was in trigonometry, that's where that authentic assessment would be placed, and that was your state, like we reported the information to the state. That significantly changed our philosophy in the math department from the standardized assessments that we had been doing forever, to really seeing the engagement in students and the willingness to try hard things and participate in a statewide assessment. So the authenticity was huge. There were 0 multiple choice questions. They were all assessed on the 8 math practice standards. And it really did change and drive our philosophy in the math department. And that started in 2015. And that's something that we have not given up. But I do think that that plays a role in what we're seeing right now, especially coupled with COVID, is that and I'm going to relate back to COVID because we got stuck. And this is our time to really work with the Carnegie Learning Specialists to help pull us out of that rut that we've been in for the last 6 years. So balancing the authentic performance assessments that we so desire and love and see the authenticity and the engagement in student learning with the SAT prep and multiple choice and more rigorous types of questions. So that's one part. The next part is building thinking classroom practices. In 2022, the small group of people in the math department started a book study around the building thinking class practices and found the engagement in their classrooms to be significantly increased in addition to the performance assessments. So in 2024 and 25, we fully trained the entire math department, actually grades 7 through the high school, on the building thinking classroom practices. And again, significant engagement. And then just last year, we started dabbling in an extension of the building thinking classrooms along the lines of something called thin slicing, where you're really looking more at the skills that students are working on and the standards related to the skills and how to make a standard in the Common Core practices, build it down to the very lowest level that you can for that low floor, and then slowly build them up with multiple questions and group work and keeping those building thinking classroom practices in place to get to the specific skills instead of just how do we keep every kid thinking and what's the next question, but it really is starting to hone in on the standard. So that's something that we think will be helpful. Also looking at blending that work with the thin slicing with what Chris was sharing with the College Board and the practice questions that we were looking at. If we can start pulling those and making those questions help become part of those thin slices so that we're giving students the exposure as well as the practice and the best practice to get there. So that's something that we're going to be continuing to work on, and we just started that work this year.
I think it's also helpful to tell everyone that both Chris Demers and Chantel DiNapoli are trained to be training others in building thinking classrooms.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't know it based on my summary of what it was earlier, but I was just trying to save time. It is worth getting into a classroom, whether it's elementary, middle, or high, to see this in action, because instead of kids sitting on computers or sitting with their math journals or sitting just listening to their teacher, you're watching them stand around the room in groups of 2 or 3, engaging with a hard problem and working through it together while the teacher is truly a facilitator of learning. And these groupings are completely randomized, so I'm not always with Barb. No offense, Barb. They never know.
We get in trouble a lot.
Yeah, we do. They never know who they're going to work with, and for many teachers, this is how they're starting their math class. 10, 15 minutes, which is, you're up, you're not seated. We know we think better when we're up and when we're moving, and then maybe now we're doing a gallery walk and people are getting to see how other students attack the same problem. We're comparing our responses. It's not about necessarily being right. It's about doing the thinking.
So this activity, in creating an analogy, I'm a visual, and a picture in my head. I think of a complex physical skill like doing a pull-up. And so if you can't do a pull-up and you're focused on the pull-up, you're going to fail every time. But what are you doing when you do a pull-up? You're pulling. So you can pull kettlebells off the ground. You can pull on a rope. You can take a band and pull it down. So, and if you get 3 or 4 kids that are all in one really good pull-up person and all of this, and you get them working together, how can we succeed in a physical task? It's all logical when it comes to things like phys ed. We break down skills. So 3 or 4 kids standing around a complex problem that requires pulling, or maybe pushing, or maybe a little bit of both. You're not only addressing the complex problem, but how to solve the complex problem, the thinking that goes into figuring it out. So looking at 4 answers, A, B, C, or D, oh, I can knock those 2 away because it's obvious that they won't be the answer. But what is it about these 2 that maybe are? All of that goes into solving difficult problems or picking the right answer.
And you're also being explicit with the students about what it means to truly collaborate.
Right.
And so part of this work is sharing that language of what does collaboration look like, sound like.
Right.
Maybe even building that criteria together. And so that there's that constant element of reflection on, all right, did we truly collaborate? Did we just ride Chris's coattails through this because she's the smart one while the other ones just sat back? That's the tendency in some cases when we have group work.
Right.
And so beyond just dealing with hard math, that isn't necessarily going to be accessible for everyone initially, but the nature of the problem may be such that everybody can find their entry point.
Right.
But it's also constantly sort of reinforcing what does it mean to collaborate so that it boosts engagement that way.
Well, and that information at every level helps solve the problem. It's not just the smart person's answers that figure it out. Sometimes
Exactly.
somebody at a different level sees it completely differently and gives the smart kid an aha moment. Oh, I never
Right.
thought of it that way. And now that person's going to invest more time next time around because they were a part of the solving it.
And when I went to one of Chris and Chantel's trainings of teachers, they were around the room in mixed groups, hacking away at a problem of if you have 13 people, how many handshakes is that? And I watched students do the same kind of problem. It was just really interesting to see all the different ways. You have your visual thinkers, you've got your people who want to just do out the mathematics of it, and it gets really competitive and fun.
Yeah.
Sorry, Nicole.
That's okay. So those 2 bullet points are really our philosophy in the math department around teaching and learning. The next piece is some not so great pieces, but they need to be shared because it's part of the story. We have been working with UDL and understanding design for learning and making sure that we're removing barriers for students and we can find ways for all students to access the curriculum. In that, there have been some, and we see this, we're reflective on our practice, we see there's accidental negative effects that have happened on rigor. And is everybody familiar with the Band-Aid analogy, where if a little kid falls and they scrape their knee, they want a Band-Aid, right? So you get them a Band-Aid for their knee. So when Susie falls, she scrapes her elbow. Oh, you need a Band-Aid for your knee? No. I need a Band-Aid for my elbow. Well, sorry, I can only give you a Band-Aid for your knee. So we're sometimes we're removing the wrong barriers. We're filling in pieces that students don't need us to fill in for them. And it's slowly brought us down. That Carnegie learning in this whole implemental change that we're jumping into next year, they're seeing this with us and they're going to help us reinstore that rigor and find the appropriate interventions for students in the classroom, the appropriate UDL pieces that we should be implementing in our teaching practices. So with
Universal
good
design.
intention, we were
Can
trying
you just
hard
can you
to
describe
fill gaps.
UDL?
So it's removing barriers for students so that we can allow them to access the curriculum.
Universal
so it might
design
be
for learning.
Universal. Sorry. I'm literally asking what the acronym. Oh, I'm sorry. Universal design for learning. Yes. Sorry. So that's a big one that we're working on, and we see it. We're reflective on that practice, and even just in the pilot that we've had in the second semester of this past school year, it's evident. We're seeing it right off the bat. Oh, I can't believe we had done X, Y, Z. They don't need X, Y. They need this instead. How did we not see that?
Can you give an example? And that's always hard, I know.
Yeah. I think it's seen, for me, the biggest one was when we're collaborating with special education, and that there's an assessment that we've given, and a teacher is coming up to us who's working with a student and saying, why is that? And we're like, there's the rigor there. This kid can do it. I've seen them do it in class. They can do it. Let's keep pushing them. And having that professional collaboration to share with the special education teacher or the interventionist to say this kid can do this work, they might just need it in a different way. We're not going to lower the standard. We're not going to lower the bar for the student. We're going to pressure them and keep going with them so that they can meet the standard. So I don't.
Well, I think,
Yeah.
right, you know, you talked about COVID, and after COVID, you know, it was all about kids feeling safe in school, and it was just this whole different piece, I think, and along with the, you know, our training, we've done extensive training with the UDL and working with lessons and predicting all the barriers, and that I think teachers just by nature get a little carried away with trying to make things like easier for kids rather than setting a bar that maybe they could meet if they were pushed a little bit, like kind of that productive struggle versus, you know, not letting the kids struggle with barriers that maybe they could have tackled on their own. I think that's kind of the thing.
Do you have a question?
I am really curious, and when you teach facilitation to teachers for activities like this, and teachers have dyads that are doing the gallery walk kind of activity that you described, I mean, what you're really describing is like a reframing of what it is to teach. I mean, to hang back. And I'm so curious about
It's
this
hard.
in a UDL framework. Like, how long do you pause for? I mean, changing that and the productive struggle, it's really
One of the
interesting.
pieces of the training for building thinking classrooms, to go double back to that, is around just that, teaching teachers about all the kinds of questions that students ask and why they ask the questions. And oftentimes, as you can imagine, a student will just sort of generate a question once the teacher is within earshot, because they want that FaceTime with the teacher. And so they'll just ask anything. And teachers get into this business to support students. And so it's easy to get sucked into that. And so by teaching teachers about the nature of the questions and why they're being asked and which ones to respond to and how to respond to those, and not necessarily answer them, but to sort of pivot
use the
away
Socratic method.
and give
Right.
that thinking
Even
back
that,
to the
is
student.
this right?
Socratic
And it-
method.
Right.
Look around the room. What do you think? How about you go talk with that group? And their thinking might be right, but the next time their thinking might be wrong. And you didn't tell them that they were right or wrong. They have to figure it out by communicating and speaking with their peers. So it's so challenging to figure out, but I mean, we're getting there.
You're reframing the source of the knowledge in the room is not the teacher, it is the room.
And our teachers have never learned in this way. So a lot of teachers teach how they were taught.
Well, just like UDL, it's reframing the expectations of the instructor more so than that of the students.
Yes, yeah.
Fascinating.
I love this so much. In corporate training, we're dealing with this because our entry-level workforce, they're so reliant on being told what to do or go break
Yeah.
that person. So this actually empowering them to think through it and run in others, it's such a great skill. So thank you.
And the skills are and that's what I'm saying, like,
Yeah.
we're trying,
It's hard.
but it's also all of this time and energy and effort and philosophy that we have for our students learning does not align with SAT.
Well,
So we need to balance. Right? I think we all
in
see
modern conveniences, you know, when we were growing up, at the various times, if you wanted the answer to a question, if I wanted to know where Mount Vesuvius was and no one in my house could tell me,
Go to
I had to
library.
find an encyclopedia or walk to Green Street and look it up. So I spent a good chunk of time not knowing the answer. The whole time I walked down to the library to find the answer. Now we just ask our phone, so we lose the ability to be in the dark. Like it's very uncomfortable. So just tell me what to do so I know what to do. And it's in math, you have to spend a lot of time not knowing.
Yeah, it's a really good point. That hanging out in uncertainty is
Yeah.
uncomfortable
Yeah.
for all of us, as humans, adults, kids, doesn't matter.
Well, and it's performance based. So how do I know if I'm doing a good job if you don't tell me what I'm, you know, yeah, and just all that stress that goes into it.
I'm going to continue on through our bullets.
Yeah.
That's okay. Okay. Thank you. So another very large change that we actually implemented not this past school year, in the 2024-25 school year, is changing up the math progression of courses. This was done under the idea that if advanced math is the most struggling area for our students, and geometry is the least assessed on the SAT. Let's swap Algebra 2 and geometry so that students finish Algebra 2 before taking the SAT. All in good thinking. We needed something drastic. We knew we were looking not at great scores, just as we are now. Some challenges that we have seen just in this past year or two of doing the switch is that geometry has been built around strengthening Algebra 1 skills and moving from the concrete to the abstract. When we put geometry after Algebra 2, we've lost the opportunity for students to explicitly learn that concrete to abstract. And students are also, when they're in geometry, their junior year, taking the SATs, they've not been practicing the Algebra 2 advanced level math skills because geometry was based around Algebra 1 skills so that we could work on the concrete to abstract. So there's kind of a whole mix of things that we didn't know how it's gonna go. Let's try it. Let's see. We got to do something, and this is where we're at. So do we stay with this progression and see maybe there's a lot of other things in place, or is this something that we look at switching back in the future?
What's our progression now?
We're currently in Algebra 1, Algebra 2, geometry.
Geometry used to split Algebra 1 and 2.
And I have heard from parents who are looking at, competitive, that they're having their kids take
Geometry first. Some or double.
VLAX geometry, because
Yes.
that's what the schools expect, that
Yeah.
they expect that Algebra 1 geometry.
Do most schools statewide do geometry in between, or do they do algebra?
Either geometry in between or integrated.
Well, and we know that
There are
from
a
looking
few.
at our, from looking at the programs, we went through that whole process last year at adopting a new program,
Not a single one was
What-
an AAG.
was what we do. They were all algebra,
Or
geometry,
integ-
algebra 2.
or integrated.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, but there are some schools. I think Hopkinton maybe. I don't know I don't want to name names, but
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that there are some. I know. I'm sorry.
Aren't there
Okay.
some geometric concepts that are introduced prior to Algebra 2? Like, for example, like quadratics, you might learn that in geometry, and then in Algebra
It helps
2
to have
is
the
where-
area thinking
does.
before going into the
Algebra,
quadratics. But there is a dabble of quadratics and introduction of that in Algebra 1. So
But it did bring some interesting, so I last year taught advanced Algebra 2. And so those students were mostly freshmen. They came from algebra, so they took algebra in 8th grade and then came to me as freshmen. And so they're taking an advanced Algebra 2 as freshmen. And a lot of them, I would say about 80% of the students also took geometry at the same time. Either they did VLAX in the summer or something because, and maybe that's why, I'm not sure. But so, essentially, the Algebra 2 skills that are going to be on that and the SAT now, they're 2 years off from the SAT. And also, developmentally, like moving to the abstract math piece, and part of that is just a developmental age, how your brain develops. And I don't know, it's a lot for freshmen because they miss that. And I don't know. It was an interesting experience because they're young and they're taking advanced algebra 2 as freshmen, and
it's a very interesting transition year
It
for
is.
students to the high school as well.
it is. And I don't know. Because these kids, they were the first. No, I guess they were the second. The first year we had half and half, so they're the second. So it would be interesting to see how these kids do. Maybe it helps them because they're in advanced pre-calculus sooner, right? So they'll take, most of my students who are in advanced algebra 2 last year are taking AP pre-calc as sophomores next year. So, maybe it could end up being a great thing because then they get through the AP pre-calc and then they're like,
Have we compared our results to districts that do algebra geometry, algebra 2, or an integrated geometry? As opposed to guessing, should we be looking at who's, are the districts that do one more successful then, is integrated more successful? Like, I feel like there's data out there that we could look at, at least to get, I know our population is different, but at least to get a sense of.
I believe when we were looking early on in looking at programming, when we ended up with Carnegie, early on we had questioned that same thing. What does the integrated look like versus the AGA or AAG? Mm-hmm. We found that a lot of schools were moving away from integrated. But
I guess
that
I had
doesn't
a
necessarily mean their scores go one way or the other.
Similar question of we're scoring significantly below state average. Have we looked at the schools scoring significantly above state average for math SATs and how their curriculum is structured or how their sequencing is structured to see how it compares to us?
Well, with the kids that took it this year, they were the first kids that had this new program, right? That took it last year, were kids that went in our Algebra 1, Algebra 2 geometry? The juniors?
Second, I think.
No, it would have been the second, I think. My question,
Because
though,
they did.
if
They were the first group, the 2025 group.
right.
And that went up.
They had
but then it came
that
down.
was they were
The 24,
But they
25?
wouldn't
Yeah.
have taken
the
SAT.
24, 25.
But but those kids that took
They'd
it that
already
year
had
were
geometry.
already juniors.
But my question is, if all the schools put geometry in the middle, then our lack in advanced math success should be a similar pattern statewide, which I feel that it was. Then we're not really any worse off than anyone because none of them are getting a full year of Algebra 2 before they take the SAT. So my other observation or thought or ponderance is if we have a larger number of students taking algebra in 8th grade, then they would do geometry in 9th grade and then algebra 2 in 10th grade.
They're still getting it before.
They're
the
still
SATs.
getting it before the SAT.
Yep.
And so, I would think that would end up having a positive effect on the math performance. It's I didn't realize, I thought that we were different in dividing the algebras with geometry. I had no idea that now we're different. And so the whole abstract thought piece is hugely important in Algebra 2. So
It's very important.
And there's, I'm just seeing just the different pieces that are going
Yeah.
on. Students who are in the Algebra 1, Algebra 2 geometry, in addition to the brain development piece, they're also introducing an algebraic gap between Algebra 2 and pre-calculus.
right.
Where's trig and my
Trig is
sequence
within-
was
yeah.
algebra.
Yeah,
There was
trig
one
is within-
algebra, geometry, trig.
Trig is in
pre-calc,
geometry.
and calc.
It's embedded in our geometry program.
Okay.
So we don't have a separate trigonometry course.
Okay.
We do basic
Really?
trigonometric
Integrated
functions
all the
in
way until I
geometry.
moved to
It was they
Yeah.
called it sequential math 1, 2, and 3, but it was mostly algebra, mostly geometry, mostly trig.
So there's not like trig and functions anymore. It's
The trig functions come in pre-calc.
got it.
But the primary trigonometric ratios and introduction is in geometry. Sine, cosine, tangent.
Yeah. Right.
I would.
Bad memories.
I understand why you made the change. I do think that it would be helpful to look at what data supports which
Yeah,
path.
I agree.
There is information out there that, and if schools that have one are generally performing better than schools that go the other way, then I think we should
Yeah.
lean that way.
Yeah.
If we can find similar districts to ours.
Yeah.
Right, that's one of our challenges
Yeah.
with comparing how other districts perform is finding our comps. And we don't have a lot of comps, so that I don't discredit the idea for sure, because we want to go where the information lies, but we just have to be mindful of, we're going to compare ourselves to Hanover, for example. They're not our comp.
No, we're not.
But we could
probably
look at
don't
our
wanna
past.
compare to Durham, but I do think
Yeah.
there's some.
Yeah, we just have to be mindful of all the variables that we want to try to equate so that we can isolate. Yeah, it does appear that this progression of courses seems to be.
Well, and what Chris shared for the results of 3 years, the first year, and I kind of think the second year, because I think those kids were juniors, so I think that was the year that they were, but.
Yeah, they were juniors.
So I think it might only be, so we can see our results when we were, because I think it's only been this past year where the students were on the new path, that they took the SATs. So we could see it in our own population.
And I think, I know it's hard, but I think we can also look at, like, if where we're comparable through elementary, and then where do we start to diverge, and that might give us some guidance, from
Yeah.
comparable school, if we're
Right. I know
doing
what you mean.
similar on
Yeah.
state assessments through 7th grade, and then all of a sudden, then what are they doing that we're not
Right,
doing?
that's a good point. Get
Well,
that more historical.
And then away
perspective.
from the test score piece, if the AGA approach, I just think of generic problem-solving skills, and abstract thinking is a hugely important piece of problem-solving that maybe shouldn't wait another. There's a lot to think about here.
Well, the concrete to abstract
Yes.
is the cornerstone of math.
Right.
Yes, it is.
From kindergarten all
Right,
the way through,
right.
right? That you always start with the concrete and build the abstract. And so to hear you, I've never heard it framed that way.
Right.
actually,
No,
the
it's
way
fascinating.
That element's been flipped. That is an interesting perspective.
So I was a student in high school that tried algebra in 8th grade, failed miserably, took algebra, pre-algebra, basic algebra part 1 in 9th grade, basic algebra part 2 in 10th grade. That's how great I was at algebra, or paying attention in class. Geometry in 11th grade, and then algebra 2 as a senior because I needed it to graduate. So I didn't even have one lick of algebra 2 when I took my SATs, and I scored a very, very, like 690 on the math SAT. Kind of laughed at that, quite honestly. But I know for me, I was just good at figuring it out. I had no idea what I was doing, but I was a good problem solver. So your comments around concrete to abstract thinking, and how I think maybe in my slow progress through algebra and all that, I'm just trying to, because I'm a more typical student than the high functioning math students that are doing advanced algebra in 9th grade. Like, good God, I think a lot of students are more like me, the struggling math student and trying to figure it out. Yeah, this is usually I don't like talking about math, but this is,
Yeah,
Well, I appreciate talking about that.
yeah,
giving us way
We
more
love
time
time
we
on
thought we'd
top.
get.
Yes.
yeah.
That's good.
Hold on, I'm
Okay.
liking it. All right, what's next?
We've looked at some specific SAT math prep opportunities to provide students with a chance to work on their skills, specifically around the SAT, because we know that within our classroom philosophies don't align. We recognize that. In the 2024-2025 school year, we added 9 win block sessions, specifically using the data that Krista shared with us, and we pulled the kids who were at that benchmark that is just below the bar and said what areas were they in, and let's put them into win sessions so they could specifically hone in on skills with a teacher around hopefully like getting more exposure. That was met with not so great attendance or enthusiasm. You might be able to see why.
When is historically a time where students get to sign up for what they need to do during that time? Or
Yeah.
it's more of a self-choosing, and they were kind of voluntold to
They
do
were
more math, and
voluntold.
they were in
Yeah.
sight.
Yeah.
With a teacher that wasn't their teacher always
Right.
necessarily too, because we kind of all took a different topic and we tried. It was a good idea, but
I think you should continue to volunteer.
volunteer.
Voluntel. I like that. It's not volunteer, it's voluntel. You're going to voluntarily come to where I tell you to come.
Yeah, and maybe that just needs to be met more with communication to families.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
say, I've signed, do it earlier on and inform families and have notes come from their teacher and administration that these are gonna be happening, so.
And maybe more of them, like a few weeks with the same teacher on the same thing too.
Yeah.
So we can build a relationship.
But I think if you communicate to parents that it's like, these are the skill gaps we know your kid has, we're gonna have them in these sessions. Like, I think if they know that it's not their teacher, but it's because this is,
Targeted support.
Right.
I grew up in New York, we had Regents exams, and I took my algebra Regents in 8th grade. I had taken like pre-algebra in 7th grade and gone on a family vacation in October of 7th grade. And I struggled next year and a half. a month before the SATs, my teacher realized I had missed factoring.
Oh, no.
And I didn't, and exactly.
And no one thought to
I even
catch
still,
you
like,
up.
My teacher, like, and then he taught it, and I passed, and I did well, and I went on. But like, it took. We didn't have, it took a really long time for them to realize that like this was the gap that I was missing, and I would, I got by, and I sort of had a general idea, but I really, and then like in one afternoon, he's like, oh. So I think like for parents to like, a lot of people I think have had that math experience where you're like,
And I think sometimes we fall as teachers at the high school, like the students are juniors. They're almost adults. We still need to communicate with families.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
more of that, I think, would be.
Agree.
is
I'm so
necessary.
surprised that you didn't have a full turnout for the SAT prep because I do
The class,
think,
we
And
were
the-
very
that's
surprised. I
fascinating.
was actually going to teach that class. I was so excited. I know there's
I
only 10
think
kids.
it's such a resource. We know that scores go up when students have access to SAT prep.
That's
And we
another
had-
one, a note
yeah.
to parents. Hey, we're offering this class as an elective. You're getting this letter because we think your child should sign up for it.
I'd be livid if my kid turned that down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder if like the kids who are more likely to self-select for that class are taking so many other classes that, and then they're
perhaps.
doing I wonder if it's like they're self-selecting so many. It's how do you get the kids who are
Exactly.
in the bubble?
That's
How do we
exactly.
volunteer tell those
to
kids?
tell them
Exactly.
you
That's
need
the
to
thing.
take this class.
That's
This needs to be an
100%
official
what
word.
it is.
I'm
It's the
telling
kids
you.
who really need that class.
Yeah.
They're not going to sign up for the class.
Right.
Right.
They don't.
So,
Yeah.
Right.
how do you get the guidance counselor to say, and we've signed you up for this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that those intervention pieces
Yeah.
are the big ones.
Right.
That-
How can we make it an opt out for those students rather than a proactive opt in? Like, I mean, maybe you hit a certain threshold and you're defaulted into it.
I mean, based like even
do
on the
that,
PSAT scores or whatnot. Yeah.
Yeah, because you clearly need it.
Is there a way that could be almost made into some sort of requirement to, I know with the 306s, it's a little
that
complicated.
is a question
but-
for a different group of people.
Yeah. No, but
That is not. We don't.
But we would,
yeah, we can talk about that later.
Kind
Very
of.
diplomatic.
we would be happy to have conversations around interventions for math and
Right.
different
Yeah.
things, problems. We would love to.
Well, it's like back to it's like the other side of the Band-Aid piece. Like, look, you have a skinned knee, you need the dang Band-Aid. No, I don't need the Band-Aid. I don't want the Band-Aid.
I don't want to.
Let me, it's
Just
the,
gonna bleed.
yeah.
And that okay. Here, I'm gonna keep going.
Yeah. Keep going.
Competency-based versus standards-based learning and assessment. We have been a competency-based department for over a decade, and in 2022, we as a district went to K through 12 math competencies that were aligned with Common Core state standards within the 3 competency buckets. But we hadn't been assessing the standards. We had been assessing the competency. So that is something that we're starting this past year, is looking at how do we assess the standards with the rubrics, and having the 1 to 4 rubrics really show the progression, but holding the standard at that 3, the passing score of the 3s, making sure that remains the standard with no wiggle room. And that's very, very challenging to do with no wiggle room. It's a conversation we're having in facilitators at the high school around what is the gap of, what is the 2, the grade of a 2 span versus the grade of a 3 span versus a grade of a 4 span. It seems like there's a much larger span of examples of work and student outputs at that 2 level, and how do we continue to show students that they're progressing even though I can't give them the 3. And so that's something that we're talking about at the high school level and facilitators, because that's a challenge that we have. How do we keep the student motivated to learn when
It's where the plus
It's
and
such
minus
a-
comes in handy.
yeah. So that's something we're working on this year, is really focusing more on that standards-based instruction and what are 4 core standards that we need per unit that we can really hone in on, instead of this overarching bucket of the competency world. And that's early on work that we're doing. We're not branched that out through all of the core 3 math courses. And then finally, our open up resources versus Carnegie Learning, the pilot and the adoption. Open up resources, we did complete the 3-year pilot of that, and that was awful.
Could you be more clear about how that was?
It was awful.
Yeah.
We've been using free resources since 2015, and
We're excited.
We're very
No.
excited. With Carnegie,
Very
it's going to
Yeah.
come a lot of change and a lot of professional
Yes.
development for teachers. We're going to increase the rigor in our courses. We'll be able to really dive into the UDL and place the correct Band-Aids on the correct students.
In the correct place.
In the correct places. So we're very excited about that. And the Carnegie Learning also had the authentic performance tasks and building thinking practices already embedded in the programs. So they match our philosophy. Really, it's going to be how can they help us bridge that SAT issue. And we'll make sure that we communicate that with them, that is a desire that we need to have as well. So that's my part. And
That's a
then
long
whew,
part.
Jen has some
Mine
next
should be
steps.
quick now because you talked about.
So I'm sorry.
all
Yeah,
of
we
it.
did
This is
talk
like-
about most of these
We
things.
did.
Kind of talk
This
about
is
all
a
your
quick-
stuff.
Yeah.
A quick what we're kind of looking forward to working on this school year. So obviously we're going to continue with our building thinking classrooms. We've had so much success, but I think it is going to be a shift from what we've been typically doing, problem solving type of things, to trying to those problems that Chris showed you that we found and investigated that are SAT related. Just hopefully doing some thin slicing to get those skills and get those different types of problems in there. The thin slicing definitely takes a long time, and so I mean that's like
Yeah.
it's not you can have 20 activities that like to break down a skill like that quickly. So it's definitely going to take some time, but I'm very optimistic that we'll be able to make some progress with it. And even if we were just to take some of the SAT problems and implement them like we've been doing with the building thinking classrooms, I think it would be really good. And adding tier 1 intervention with the math lab. So we've had when I actually went to the high school, I guess 5 years ago, I went as primarily a flex teacher, which was for students that were struggling in classes. It was after, I think it was funded by COVID money for the district, right? With like the
ESSER
coaches.
funds,
That's
yeah.
funds,
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, and that's primarily what I did. It was fabulous. It was so great to get to work with these kids and have them. And then that kind of every year just kind of until it went completely away. But we've held on to one section in math that I'm very thankful for. That this year, our struggle with that one section, and I've taught that for the past few years, is it's 2 45-minute blocks. So to schedule kids in there, it's just such a limited number of students who have that period, and it's so hard to hit enough kids. And so our idea for this coming year is to have a math lab during period 6 lunch blocks. So it will span all of the lunches for students. And it's new. It's where we're trying it for the first time, because in the past the flex classes have been loaded with students who have that period free, who teachers say the kids need the help, and so it does work, but for a very limited number of kids. So this would be available to Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2 students. Mrs. Woody, Kirsten Woody is going to.
She's fabulous.
She's fabulous,
Yeah.
and so we're working to not overwhelm her and organize it. That certain days would be like an algebra day. It's on a tide day. So the first tide day of the week would be the algebra day, and then algebra 2, and she's going to have like sign-ups, so that she doesn't get overwhelmed with people. And we'll see how it goes. If it doesn't go, we'll revisit it if it doesn't work.
So would
but-
students go during their lunch period?
Correct, during their
Right,
lunch period.
right.
For help, and this is like kind of like more of a help in their class at this point. But because there's no, other than the WIN block on Fridays,
Right.
there's no other time for students.
Can they eat their lunch while they're getting
Yes,
help?
that's
Yeah,
the idea.
yeah.
Like they get their lunch and
Yeah,
come up. Yeah,
awesome,
that's
okay.
the total idea. And students tend to like to leave the lunchroom, so I'm hoping.
Yeah,
that
that I was gonna
especially
say.
like with their friends.
Yeah.
Or, I know from experience like that, like if, for example, like advanced algebra 2 kids would want to be there every single day to because they're freaking out about the problems. But so we're really going to try to make it an algebra 1 day, an algebra 2 day, geometry day, and we'll see. I'm very optimistic about it. It would, take a lot of promoting and communication with families and students, and so hopefully that will work.
Yeah, the math lab model used to be a teacher duty option.
Right,
So
right.
we, instead of running a study hall, we would run a math lab, which is drop-in support tutoring from a licensed certified math teacher at the high school for free every day. Free for the students because they're there. And then when we lost that during COVID because spacing and just all the logistics that were happening. So we're trying to build it back in as best as we can.
Yeah, we're hopeful. So we'll assess and see how that goes. Also, the math department will hope to work to have some expectations department-wide for student reassessment. The reassessing it's a great thing. It's a great thing for growth mindset for students, but it's probably a little bit of everything with COVID and like holding kids a little less accountable for things over the years probably started with the COVID stuff, but some students, shocker, don't do their formatives or homework if they're not graded on it, and so we're trying. I think we need to really set some expectations so that to reassess, the students have to actually put in some work and show some growth. Because it's almost gotten to you take 8 on, students will be taking the test. When can I reassess this? Like as they're taking it. And so it's kind of, I think we need to rewrite that narrative a little because it's a wonderful opportunity and it really supports competencies and standards and, the growth model. But we need to, organize it in a way where students feel the importance of the formative work that comes before and actually learning to understand it, not just for the grades. So hopefully we'll do that. We plan PD work with Chris again on diving into the SAT results, and Chantal, she's been trained on Carnegie instruction, right? So she's gonna be a fabulous resource.
She keeps asking me, so you want me working with the high school too?
Yes.
I'm like, yep.
Yes, we do. The high school wants
Yes, we want you.
working also. So yes, that will be fabulous. And within Carnegie itself, so before I get into, our plans with a learning specialist, I know that Chris spoke about that. The assessment platform in Carnegie it's very diverse, and we haven't unpacked everything, but there's a performance task, which is very pacey, like our philosophy, like Nicole was talking about, and then there's just it's kind of like regular kind of questions, but there's also multiple choice questions, which we kind of have moved away from. But in an Algebra 2 last year, we piloted from when we started in February through the end of the year. And we worked in some of those multiple choice questions, and what we actually did was have students, and we did some work with this in class prior to, obviously, but not necessarily pick the right answer, but explain why the other ones were wrong, like as part of the thing and stuff like that too. So they have really good multiple choice questions too. So like with different graph choices, like why doesn't this graph fit this equation? And so that is something that could be really helpful for the SAT just based on that test. And when we shared about the program, we spoke about the Desmos graphing calculator. That's actually embedded in the SAT test online, and it's also embedded with the Carnegie work and stuff anything that they do online, and we actually use that in class too. So we could do a lot more with that, and I think that has to be a big focus because the students can use it on every single question on the SATs if they know how to use it. But you have to know. Like if you don't know that you can type in an equation, but it has to be in function format and find it. So they need to know how to use the tool, because it seems like a great tool. It's like, wow, you have to use this thing, but if you don't know how to use it. So Carnegie will really help us to do that as well. And then as just also the other things that, all of our professional development and I love how they work with students and teachers on what we need, that it's not just sitting in a PD. I love that. And we in the spring, we did a few sessions, where they did a lesson, and then we had a debrief, and we talked about, and it's just, it is really good professional development, and so I'm very excited about that. And they really can individualize and cater, I think, to our needs, so that's good. Nicole talked a little bit about math interventions that I think really are in our realm of decision making, but I think that might be something moving forward that we need to have a discussion with, that we would love to chat about.
Wow.
We're not doing nothing. We take the 20% and we reflect.
Yeah.
And we've been reflecting for years on that 20% number.
Yeah.
And I know we had a limited time. Thank you for all of your time today, but we're
this-
trying.
well,
We're
this
trying
whole- this-
everything we can.
This whole conversation was like a math lesson, quite honestly, in listening to you explain the data and how we find the data and is it statistically significant, and the way that we solve problems, and some of it's concrete and some of it isn't, and all of that lends itself to the 20% now, doesn't it? Because where is it that is it? Where's the factors, right? Where's that one little week's vacation that upsets the whole apple cart? But that's such a good analogy, though, Pam, because sometimes that's all it is. So, yeah.
And this isn't for you. It's actually more for the lower grades. During COVID, Mr. Napoli did these videos of like, what is a number
Begrudgingly.
sentence? Yeah. But I have to say that, like, as a parent who wasn't taught math that way, like in the younger grades, to sort of bring some of those out again and send them out to parents when they're doing the lessons, because, like, I had never heard the phrase number sentence. And, when I learned math, we learned about families and you carry.
Right.
And so, like, I think that helps giving parents the tool to understand, because what their kids are doing and why the new math.
Right. Well, and we I remember having, when I taught at Walker School 9,000 years ago, but we'd have family math nights and have the parents come in, and those families
And we
needed.
still have those.
Yeah. But the videos you're talking about, getting it, then the people that can't or won't come to family math night can put it on their phone.
If it's just
Yeah.
like, all the, like,
Yeah.
most of the elementary teachers, they send this, like,
let's get 'em
weekly
out there.
thing, and
Yeah.
if it had a
Way better than
link
mine.
to, like, this is,
I doubt that.
Yeah, they were absolutely.
Yeah.
The new Carnegie program does have a family letter in multiple languages, I might add.
Nice.
That we can download and send out, and parents
The iReady
wear,
math classroom
for
does
every
too for
unit.
elementary.
So, and there's there's a video help for the homework lessons. So students will have a QR code and they can go in and watch a video, and they can actually choose the type of person and language,
The
and
avatar.
speed, the
Yeah,
avatar
that's
for
wonderful.
who is going to be walking them through that skill for the day. Like it's got the things that we're looking for communicating better with families.
So 2 things. Please keep us in the loop with progress, good and bad, struggles and celebrations. And if there's anything we can do as an instructional committee, or if other big decisions come up, I know we'll be talking a lot about all of this as a full board, but just reach out because it's nice to talk about learning as a school board member as opposed to money. So
you.
anyway.
We need to
Thanks,
approve
team.
the professional development plan. We've already approved.
No, this is,
professional
this is all,
development plans for the year,
this is
right?
no new money, no new
Yep.
anything.
Yep.
This is just now they're implementing what we already approved, so. All right, so could I have a? First of all, thank you. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Motion to adjourn.
Can I ask, all those in favor?
You are not dismissed.
I'll work with Brenda on next agenda.
Awesome. And I took no.